I've always believed that trust is the foundation of a marriage, the invisible thread that holds two people together through the chaos of life. For 15 years, I thought that thread between me and Claire was unbreakable. We built a life in the suburbs of Portland, a cozy 3-bedroom house with a wraparound porch, a garden she tended with obsessive care, and a rhythm to our days that felt as steady as the tides. I'm a structural engineer, spending my days designing bridges and buildings, ensuring they stand firm against storms and time. Claire, a freelance graphic designer, worked from home, her creativity spilling into every corner of our lives. Hand-painted mugs, custom curtains, even the quirky birdhouses she built for the backyard. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was ours and I loved it. That morning, a crisp October day with leaves crunching underfoot, I left for work as usual. Claire was in the kitchen, humming softly as she poured coffee into my travel mug. Her auburn hair was pulled into a messy bun, and she wore one of my old flannel shirts over leggings, a look that always made me pause and smile. "Don't forget we're having dinner with the Hendersons tonight," she said, handing me the mug. Her hazel eyes sparkled with that familiar warmth, and I kissed her forehead, lingering just a moment longer than necessary. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, grabbing my keys. "Love you, Claire." "Love you too, Ethan," she replied, her voice soft but certain. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? The day at the office was a blur of blueprints and meetings, the kind of grind that keeps you too busy to overthink. But around noon, something shifted. My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Asterisk running errands. Might be out for a bit. Don't worry if I'm not home when you get back. Asterisk it wasn't unusual. She often dashed out for art supplies or to meet a client, but the phrasing felt off, too formal for her usual breezy texts. I brushed it aside, chalking it up to a busy morning. By 6, I was home, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Claire wasn't there, and her car wasn't in the driveway. I texted her. Asterisk hey. You okay? Dinner's at 7:30. Asterisk no response. I waited, pacing the living room, the unease growing like a knot in my chest. By 7:15, I called the Hendersons to cancel, mumbling some excuse about Claire feeling under the weather. Their sympathetic tone only made the knot tighten. At 8:47, headlights swept across the front windows, and Claire's Prius pulled in. She stepped inside, her cheeks flushed, her hair slightly disheveled. "Sorry, Ethan," she said, dropping her bag on the counter. "Got caught up with a client meeting that ran late. Lost track of time." I studied her. The flannel was gone, replaced by a fitted sweater I didn't recognize. Her lipstick was fresh, a shade of red she rarely wore. "You didn't text back," I said, keeping my voice even. "I was worried." She laughed a little too brightly. "Oh, my phone died. You know how it is, client meetings can be intense. I'll charge it now." She plugged her phone in, avoiding my gaze, and busied herself with making tea. The conversation shifted to mundane things, her latest design project, my upcoming deadline. But the air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing just out of sight. Over the next few weeks, the cracks started to show. Claire was distracted, her phone always close, her screen tilted away when I walked by. She started leaving the house more often. Errands, she said, or coffee with friends I'd never heard of. One night, I woke at 2 a.m. to find her side of the bed empty. I found her in the living room, texting furiously, her face lit by the glow of her phone. When I asked who she was talking to, she said it was a client in a different time zone. "They're demanding," she added, slipping the phone into her pocket. I nodded, but the doubt had taken root. I'm not a suspicious man by nature. I've always trusted Claire, believed in her the way I believe in the laws of physics, constants that don't waver. But the signs were piling up, and I couldn't ignore them. Her sudden interest in new clothes, the way she'd linger in front of the mirror, the faint scent of cologne on her jacket that wasn't mine. I started paying attention, cataloging the inconsistencies like I would a flawed blueprint. One evening, while she was out meeting a client, I did something I'd never imagined doing. I checked her laptop. It was open on the kitchen table, her password saved, a habit she'd never broken. My hands shook as I opened her email, half expecting to find nothing, half dreading what I might uncover. There it was, buried in a folder labeled Work Miscellaneous. An email thread with someone named Ryan Kessler. The name didn't ring a bell, but the tone of the messages did. Can't stop thinking about yesterday, one read. You make everything better, said another. My stomach churned as I scrolled through weeks of correspondence. Flirty, intimate, undeniable. Ryan Kessler. I typed his name into my phone, my fingers clumsy. A quick search on X pulled up his profile. A photographer, mid-30s, based in Portland. His posts were artsy shots of cityscapes and coffee shops, but one photo stopped me cold. A candid of Claire at a cafe, laughing, her hair catching the sunlight. The caption read, "Moments that make life worth living." Posted 3 weeks ago. I sat there, staring at the screen, the world tilting under me. My wife, my Claire, was sharing moments with another man. Moments that belonged to us. The betrayal wasn't just in the act. It was in the secrecy, the ease with which she'd woven this other life. I closed the laptop, my hands steady now, not with calm but with a cold, focused anger. I didn't confront her that night. I needed proof, not just words on a screen. I needed to see it for myself. The next day, I called in sick and rented a car. A nondescript sedan that wouldn't stand out. When Claire left for another errand, I followed her, keeping my distance. She drove to a part of town we rarely visited, a trendy neighborhood with art galleries and microbreweries. She parked outside a loft building, and I watched from across the street as she buzzed an intercom and disappeared inside. 20 minutes later, a man matching Ryan's profile photo, tall, lean, with dark hair and a leather jacket, stepped out to meet her. They didn't touch, not at first, but the way she smiled at him, the way she leaned closer as they walked, told me everything. I followed them to a nearby park, where they sat on a bench, their knees brushing, their laughter carrying on the wind. I stayed in the car, gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white. When he reached for her hand, and she let him, something inside me snapped. Not into rage, but into clarity. This wasn't a fling. This was a theft, a violation of everything we'd built. I drove home, my mind racing, not with thoughts of confrontation but with something colder, more calculated. That night, Claire came home late again, her excuses flimsier than ever. I played along, nodding as she talked about a non-existent client, my face a mask of normalcy. Inside, I was building a plan, not just to confront her but to make her feel the weight of what she'd done. Revenge, I realized, wasn't about shouting or breaking things. It was about dismantling the world she'd created, piece by piece, until she had nothing left to hide behind. I started small. I mirrored her phone to a burner I bought, every text and call feeding into an app one could monitor. I installed a GPS tracker in her car, a tiny device tucked under the dashboard. I wasn't proud of it, but pride was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. The data poured in, texts to Ryan, late-night calls, meetups at his loft, at hotels, at places we'd once gone together. Each piece was a shard of glass, cutting deeper, but I kept collecting them, building a mosaic of her betrayal. I also dug into Ryan Kessler. He wasn't just a photographer. He was a minor local celebrity, with a following on X and a reputation for charming his way into collaborations. Divorced, no kids, a trail of short-lived relationships in his wake. I found his ex-wife's blog, where she hinted at his manipulative streak, his knack for making people feel special until he got what he wanted. I wondered if Claire saw it, or if she was too caught up in his lens to notice. Weeks passed, and I played the part of the oblivious husband, kissing her goodbye each morning, asking about her day, even as I tracked her lies. The Hendersons invited us over again, and I watched her charm them, her laughter bright, her hand resting on my arm like nothing had changed. I smiled back, but my mind was elsewhere, plotting. I didn't want to just expose her. I wanted her to feel the betrayal as acutely as I did, to lose something she valued as much as I'd valued our trust. The plan took shape slowly, deliberately. I started by contacting Ryan's ex-wife, posing as a potential client interested in his work. She was cautious but open, sharing stories of his unreliability, his tendency to blur professional and personal lines. I reached out to his current clients, planting seeds of doubt. Anonymous emails about missed deadlines, questionable ethics. I knew his career relied on his reputation, and I intended to chip away at it, one subtle blow at a time. For Claire, it was different. Her betrayal wasn't just about Ryan. It was about the life she'd pretended to live with me. I began collecting evidence of her work, her client contracts, her invoices, her portfolio. I noticed discrepancies, small at first, then glaring. Payments she couldn't account for, projects she claimed to be working on that didn't exist. I realized she'd been funneling money, likely to fund her time with Ryan, maybe even to plan a future without me. The thought fueled my resolve. By December, I had enough. The GPS logs showed her at Ryan's loft 3 times a week. The texts were explicit, not just affectionate but reckless, as if she thought I'd never look. I had screenshots, recordings, even a grainy photo I'd taken of them at a hotel bar, her hand on his thigh. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted her to walk into the trap unaware, to feel the ground give way beneath her. The first step was to secure my own foundation. I met with a lawyer quietly to understand my options. I moved money into a separate account, not to hide it but to protect it. I documented everything, our assets, our shared accounts, her spending patterns. I wasn't just preparing for a divorce. I was preparing for a reckoning. Claire had always prided herself on her independence, her creativity, her charm. I would take those apart, not with violence or cruelty, but with precision, exposing the truth she thought she could bury. As Christmas approached, I watched her decorate the house, humming carols, oblivious to the storm I was building. She kissed me under the mistletoe, and I kissed her back, my heart a stone. The thread between us was frayed beyond repair, but she didn't know it yet. I would make sure she did, and when the moment came, it would be unforgettable. Winter settled over Portland like a heavy blanket, the air sharp with frost, the streets glistening under streetlights. Our home, once a sanctuary, felt like a stage where Claire and I performed a hollow version of our marriage. Every morning, I woke to the same routine. Her brewing coffee, me packing my briefcase, both of us exchanging smiles that didn't reach our eyes. I knew her secret now, and the weight of it sat between us, unspoken but suffocating. My plan was in motion, a slow-burning fuse, and I was determined to see it through, not out of spite, but out of a need to reclaim what she'd taken from me. My trust, my peace, my sense of self. The evidence I'd gathered was overwhelming. The burner phone I'd set up to mirror Claire's texts buzzed constantly with messages to Ryan Kessler. They weren't just flirtations anymore. They were plans, dreams of a life that didn't include me. We could rent a place in Seattle, one of her texts read. Just you and me, no baggage. Baggage. That's what I'd become to her. I saved every message, every call log, every GPS coordinate that placed her at his loft or a hotel across town. I wasn't just building a case. I was constructing a narrative, one that would unravel her carefully curated world. I started with Ryan. His photography career was his lifeline, his identity tied to his reputation as a visionary artist. I'd learned from his ex-wife's blog that he was sensitive to criticism, quick to charm his way out of trouble but brittle when his ego was bruised. I began subtly, anonymously. Using a fake email, I contacted his recent clients, posing as a concerned colleague who'd heard rumors about missed deadlines and unprofessional behavior. I didn't lie outright. I referenced real projects I'd found through his ex-profile, twisting just enough truth to raise doubts. One client, a local gallery owner, responded with a curt, *thanks for the heads up. We'll look into it. Another, a restaurant chain commissioning promotional photos, stopped responding to his posts altogether. I escalated by creating an anonymous X account, posting vague but pointed comments on his public photos. Heard this guy's not as reliable as he seems. Check his references before hiring. Nothing traceable, nothing overt, but enough to plant seeds. I watched his engagement drop, his usual flood of likes and comments slowing to a trickle. He posted less frequently, his captions turning defensive. grateful for the real ones who know my work speaks for itself. I could almost feel his frustration through the screen, and it fueled me. This wasn't about ruining him. It was about making him feel the instability Claire had inflicted on me. Claire, meanwhile, was slipping. Her excuses grew flimsier, her absences longer. She'd come home with that same flushed look, her stories about client meetings, peppered with details that didn't add up. One night, she claimed she'd been at a coffee shop with a new client, but her jacket smelled of cedar and smoke, a scent I'd traced to Ryan's loft from a photo he'd posted of his workspace. I didn't call her out. Instead, I watched, cataloging every lie. She was so confident in her deception, so sure I was oblivious, that she didn't notice the shift in me. The way I stopped asking questions, the way I studied her like a blueprint I was redesigning. I dug deeper into her professional life. Claire's graphic design business was her pride, a testament to her independence. But the discrepancies I'd noticed earlier, unexplained payments, missing invoices, pointed to something bigger. Using her laptop when she was out, I accessed her accounting software. She'd been sloppy, leaving a trail of transactions that didn't match her client records. Thousands of dollars had been funneled into a separate account, one I hadn't known about. Some went to hotel bookings, others to purchases I couldn't trace. Gifts, maybe, or deposits for whatever future she was planning with Ryan. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial, a deliberate siphoning of our shared life. I consulted my lawyer again, a sharp woman named Diane who specialized in high-conflict divorces. She advised me to keep gathering evidence but warned against acting impulsively. "You're building a strong case," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But don't let emotion drive this. Stay methodical." I took her advice, channeling my anger into precision. I hired a private investigator, a discreet man named Paul who'd come recommended by a colleague. Paul's job was simple. Get me undeniable proof, photos, videos, anything that could hold up in court or, more importantly, in the court of Claire's own conscience. Paul delivered within a week. The photos were clinical, almost sterile, but they burned. Claire and Ryan at a hotel downtown, her arm looped through his as they entered. Another of them in his loft, her leaning against him at a window, his hand on her waist. The video was worse. Grainy footage from a park, the two of them kissing under a tree, oblivious to the world. I watched it once, then saved it to a secure drive. I didn't need to see it again. The image was seared into me. With the evidence in hand, I shifted to the next phase, exposing Claire's lies to those who mattered most to her. She'd always cared deeply about her reputation, her image as the perfect wife, the talented artist, the reliable friend. I started with our social circle. The Hendersons, our closest friends, were hosting a holiday party in mid-December, and I saw my opportunity. I didn't plan to make a scene, that wasn't my style. Instead, I planted subtle doubts. Over drinks, I mentioned to Lisa Henderson that Claire had been so busy with work lately, I barely see her. When Lisa pressed for details, I shrugged, letting her fill in the blanks. "She's been working with this photographer, Ryan something," I added casually. "Seems like they're close." Lisa's eyebrows shot up, and I knew the gossip would spread. I did the same with Claire's sister, Mara, who lived an hour away. Mara and Claire were close, but Mara had always been protective, quick to call out nonsense. I called her under the pretense of planning a surprise for Claire's birthday. "She's been so secretive lately," I said, letting my voice carry just enough worry. "Always out with this Ryan guy for work. I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it." Mara's silence on the other end told me she'd start asking questions. I didn't need to say more. The seeds were sown. Professionally, I targeted Claire's clients. Using another anonymous email, I contacted a few of her biggest accounts, posing as a concerned colleague. I hinted at inconsistencies in her deliverables, referencing specific projects I'd found in her files. One client, a local nonprofit, responded with a request for a meeting to clarify their contract. Another, a small business she'd designed a logo for, stopped responding to her emails entirely. I watched her grow frustrated, her late-night muttering about unreliable clients, confirming my efforts were hitting their mark. Christmas Eve was the turning point. Claire had planned a big dinner at our house, inviting friends and family, her chance to play the perfect hostess. I helped her set up, stringing lights, arranging the table, all while my mind churned with the final pieces of my plan. The house was full of laughter and clinking glasses, but I felt like a ghost, moving through the motions. Claire was radiant, her charm dialed up, but I noticed the cracks. Her phone buzzing in her pocket, her quick glances at it when she thought no one was looking. After dinner, as guests mingled, I slipped into our home office and connected my laptop to the TV in the living room, where we'd planned to show a slideshow of old family photos. I prepared something else instead. It wasn't the full reveal, not yet, but a carefully curated selection of moments. A screenshot of a text from Claire to Ryan, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow," overlaid on a photo of our wedding day. Another of her at his loft, pulled from his ex-posts, paired with a line from her email, "You make me feel alive." I set it to loop subtly, time to start when most guests were distracted by dessert. The first person to notice was Mara, who froze mid-conversation, her wineglass trembling. Others followed, their chatter fading as the screen cycled through the images. Claire was in the kitchen, oblivious, until Lisa Henderson pulled her into the room. I watched her face crumple, her eyes darting from the screen to me. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "What is this?" I shrugged, my expression neutral. "Just some memories," I said, loud enough for the room to hear. "Thought it'd be nice to share." The guests shifted uncomfortably, some leaving early, others whispering. Claire tried to laugh it off, claiming it was a misunderstanding, but the damage was done. Her perfect image was fracturing, and I hadn't even played my full hand. That night, after everyone left, she confronted me. "How could you do that?" she demanded, tears streaming down her face. "You humiliated me." "You humiliated yourself," I said, my voice cold but steady. "I know about Ryan, Claire. I've known for months." She froze, her excuses dying on her lips. For the first time, she saw me. Not the trusting husband, but the man who'd been watching, waiting, planning. She stammered, trying to explain, but I walked away, leaving her in the wreckage of her own lies. The next morning, I moved out, renting a small apartment across town. I didn't file for divorce yet. That would come later. Instead, I tightened the web. I sent Paul's photos to Mara, who called Claire in a fury. I forwarded the financial discrepancies to her biggest client, who launched an audit. Ryan's career continued to falter, his ex-posts now desperate pleas for new gigs. I wasn't done, though. The final act was coming, and it would be surgical, devastating, and entirely deserved. The new year arrived in Portland with a biting chill, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes everything feel raw. I'd settled into my apartment, a sparse one-bedroom in a quiet part of town, its bare walls a stark contrast to the home I'd left behind. The space was functional: bed, desk, a coffee maker that hissed like it held a grudge. But it was mine, free of Claire's presence, her scent, her lies. Every day, I woke with a single purpose: to finish what I'd started. The betrayal had carved a hollow in me, but it also sharpened my focus, turning my pain into a blade I wielded with precision. This wasn't about destruction for its own sake. It was about justice, about making Claire and Ryan face the consequences of their choices in a way that mirrored the devastation they'd inflicted on me. I'd already dismantled the edges of their worlds. Ryan's career was teetering, his clients pulling away, his ex-posts met with silence or skepticism. Claire's reputation was fraying, her social circle whispering, her sister Mara barely speaking to her. The Christmas Eve slideshow had been a warning shot, a crack in the facade she'd built. But I wasn't done. The final act needed to be undeniable, a public unraveling that left no room for her to spin a new narrative or for Ryan to charm his way out. I wanted them to feel exposed, vulnerable, the way I'd felt when I first saw that photo of her laughing in his arms. My lawyer, Diane, was ready to move forward with the divorce, but I asked her to hold off. Filing now would be too clean, too final. I needed Claire to live in the uncertainty a little longer, to feel the ground shifting beneath her as I had. Paul, the private investigator, continued to feed me updates. Claire and Ryan were still meeting, though less frequently now, their encounters tinged with paranoia. Paul's latest report included a recording from a cafe where they argued in hushed tones. Claire accusing Ryan of being careless. Ryan snapping back that she was the one who'd been sloppy with her husband. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were starting to turn on each other, and I intended to widen that fracture. My next move was to go after Claire's professional life with surgical precision. Her graphic design business was her identity, the thing she clung to as proof of her independence. I'd already planted doubts with her clients, but now I escalated. Using the financial records I'd uncovered, I compiled a detailed dossier of her discrepancies, unreported income, falsified invoices, payments funneled to that secret account. I didn't send it to her clients directly. That would be too obvious. Instead, I tipped off a local business journal that had a reputation for exposing shady practices in the creative industry. Posing as a concerned freelancer, I emailed their investigative reporter, attaching just enough evidence to pique her interest. A few screenshots of Claire's transactions, a vague reference to ethical concerns in her business. I knew the reporter would dig deeper, and Claire's sloppy bookkeeping would do the rest. Within a week, the journal contacted Claire for comment. I saw the panic in her when she came to my apartment unannounced, her face pale, her usual composure gone. "Ethan, did you do this?" she demanded, holding up her phone, where a draft of the article had been emailed to her for response. The headline was damning. Local designer faces questions over financial practices. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, and met her gaze. "Do what?" I said, my voice flat. "You made your choices, Claire. Choices have consequences." She stammered, tears welling up. "This could ruin me, my clients, my reputation. Ethan, please, if you know anything, stop this." Her desperation was almost palpable, but I felt nothing. Not pity, not satisfaction, just a cold resolve. I shrugged and closed the door, leaving her standing on the stoop, her pleas fading into the night. The article was published 2 days later, a measured but devastating piece that questioned Claire's integrity without outright accusing her of fraud. It was enough to spook her remaining clients. 2 dropped her within days, citing concerns about transparency. Her ex account, usually a showcase of her work, went silent. Mara called me, her voice heavy with worry, asking if I thought Claire was in over her head. I didn't confirm or deny anything, just let the silence speak for itself. The web was tightening, and Claire was starting to feel it. Ryan was next. His photography career was already wobbling, but I wanted to ensure it collapsed under its own weight. I'd learned through Paul that Ryan had been pitching a major project, a photo series for a national travel magazine, his big break. The editor was someone I could reach indirectly through a colleague in the industry, a man named Greg who owed me a favor from a bridge project we'd collaborated on. I didn't ask Greg to sabotage Ryan outright. I simply passed along concerns about his reliability, referencing the same rumors I'd spread earlier. Greg, ever cautious, suggested the editor look into Ryan's track record. A week later, Paul confirmed the magazine had passed on Ryan's pitch, citing budget constraints. Ryan's ex-posts grew frantic, cryptic rants about haters and fake news. I didn't smile, but I felt a quiet satisfaction. His world was shrinking, just as mine had when I realized Claire's betrayal. The final piece of my plan was the most delicate, the one that required the most patience. I wanted Claire and Ryan to face each other's truths, to see the flaws they'd ignored in their shared fantasy. I knew from Paul's reports that their relationship was fraying. Claire's stress over her business, Ryan's frustration with his failing career. I decided to push them over the edge. Using the anonymous X account, I sent Ryan a message, posing as a concerned friend. Asterisk, heard Claire's been talking to other guys. Check her phone if you don't believe me. Asterisk, it was a lie, but it didn't need to be true. Doubt was enough. I sent Claire a similar message, suggesting Ryan was pitching her clients behind her back to save his own skin. I had no proof of this either, but I knew their trust was fragile, built on the shaky foundation of their affair. Paul's next report confirmed the fallout. He tailed them to a heated argument at a bar, Claire accusing Ryan of betrayal, Ryan throwing back that she was too clingy, too needy. They parted ways that night, and Claire's texts to him stopped. I saw it in her face when I ran into her at the grocery store a few days later, her eyes red, her posture defeated. She tried to talk to me, to explain, but I cut her off. "You made your bed, Claire," I said, walking away. The words felt hollow, but they were necessary. She needed to feel the weight of her choices alone. The final act came in February, at a community art event Claire had helped organize before her world started crumbling. It was a public showcase, a chance for local artists to display their work, and Claire was still listed as a co-chair, despite her recent silence. I knew she'd be there, clinging to the last threads of her reputation. Ryan, too, had a small exhibit, a desperate attempt to salvage his career. I saw my opportunity to bring it all together. I worked with Paul to create a display, not part of the official event, but impossible to ignore. Using a rented projector, I set up a discreet installation in an alley near the venue, where attendees would pass on their way out. The projection looped the evidence I'd gathered, Claire's texts to Ryan, their photos together, the financial records, all anonymized but unmistakable to anyone who knew them. I added a single line of text at the end, "Truth is the best art." I didn't stay to watch, but Paul did, reporting back that the crowd lingered, whispering, some recognizing Claire and Ryan. Claire left early, her face ashen. Ryan tore down his exhibit and stormed off. The next day, X was buzzing with posts about the mystery projection, with some calling it a bold statement on accountability, others speculating about the disgraced artist couple. Claire's business collapsed entirely within a month. Her last major client pulled out, citing the journal article and reputational risks. Ryan moved to Seattle, his X account deleted, his career in tatters. I filed for divorce the day after the art event, and Diane ensured it was airtight. Claire's financial misconduct gave me leverage, and she didn't contest it. She moved out of our house, renting a small apartment, her once vibrant social media now a ghost town. I sold the house in March, the wraparound porch and Claire's garden fading into someone else's story. I didn't feel triumph, only a quiet relief, like setting down a weight I'd carried too long. The trust I'd lost couldn't be rebuilt, but I'd reclaimed my dignity. Claire and Ryan had built their affair on lies, and I'd torn it down with truth, piece by careful piece. As I drove to my new apartment, the city lights blurring past, I felt something new. Not forgiveness, not peace, but a hard-won freedom. I was ready to start again, on my own terms.